evening to kick off the new academic year here at UCLA and to welcome and to learn from the work of Janette, the former commissioner of the New York City Department of Transportation. The University of California has a wonderful tradition of appointing Regents lecturers, and these are distinguished leaders from non-academic fields who visit our campus. They present their ideas. They work with students to enrich and diversify their educational experience. And so we'll hear in a minute, Ms. Sadik is a perfect fit for this role. So often we hear about the many urban problems facing large urban areas: bankruptcy, poverty, poor urban design, traffic congestion, pollution, and on. And I must admit that, as some of my students like to say, sort of the word awesome, that it's awesome when someone in my own line of work achieves rock star status and tremendous visibility for helping to address some of these problems. So awesome. And by the turnout this evening, it certainly does appear awesome, and if Ms. Sadik falls into this category, and a perfect fit for a UCLA Regents lecture. Right now, I want to turn the floor over to Professor Martin Wax, who will introduce Ms. Sadik beyond the awesome term, and he's going to be orchestrating this evening's event. I can think of no better person for this job. We are very lucky to have Professor Wax on campus. He currently teaches transportation planning courses in the Department of Urban Planning, where he was a professor for 25 years earlier in his career. And sandwiched in between his two stints at UCLA, he was a professor of city and regional planning and civil and environmental engineering at UC Berkeley, as well as the director of the Institute of Transportation Studies there. He's also served as the chairman of the executive committee of the Transportation Research Board, and more recently, Professor Wax was the director of the RAND Transportation, Space, and Technology program. I've just mentioned his many titles, but Professor Wax has had a long career filled with many, many accomplishments in his own right to both planning scholarship, planning practice, and planning policy. I can't help myself. It's Major League Baseball playoff season, and home teams are in the running. So I'll have to end by saying that we're really fortunate this evening to hear from a night of transportation heavy hitters. So at this time, all right. So at this time, Marty loves baseball, so that's part directed at Marty as well. So at this time, please join me in welcoming Professor Martin Wax.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And you've already said in your introduction some of the things I was going to say about Janette Sadik. It's a great privilege to be introducing her for the third time in several years. I serve as moderator. But what I want to tell you is that I have worked in the field of transportation for 50 years. And when I started, I found this a fascinating field, and I was interested in streets and traffic and pedestrians and transit and parking, and I still am interested in all of those things. But people would stop as soon as I got into 2 or 3 or 4 sentences and say, they'd look at their watch, they'd look over my shoulder, they'd suddenly remember they have an appointment with the plumber, and transportation hasn't been, for most of my career, very glamorous at all. I remember one occasion on which a very distinguished scholar asked me to talk about my work, and about 3 sentences into my discussion, he said, let's talk about something else. And I remember just like 2 weeks ago, my 6-year-old granddaughter asked me, why are there so many cars on La Cienega Boulevard? And I said, you've asked the right guy. I started explaining it, and my 6-year-old granddaughter said, Papa, you're so silly. me, it is amazing to me that when I told people that Janette Sadik was coming to deliver a Regents lecture, the reaction was, "That's amazing! She's a rock star! She turns this subject into really exciting presentations, and she's had an enormous impact on the world." So I'm here tonight primarily to learn how to take my work and make it into an exciting subject warranted, for which the phrase rock star would be warranted. And Abby already used that phrase, and it's been used many times in the run-up to this evening's event. I first met Janette Sadik when she was working at Parsons Bricker Huthwaite in Douglas, a major transportation consulting firm in New York, doing important work that was widely noticed. She has a bachelor's degree from Occidental College here in Los Angeles, and a law degree from Columbia University, and people took such note of her outstanding work that Mayor Michael Bloomberg chose her to be the Commissioner of Transportation in New York. And she had probably more influence on changing the way things were done in transportation in New York than any person who ever held that position. And he was so grateful and appreciative of that when he retired from office and formed Bloomberg Associates, which now offers consulting advice on transportation and many other urban issues around the world, he invited her to continue working with him in the capacity as a senior person at Bloomberg Associates. It's a unique organization that offers consulting in many cities around the world, including this one, including Los Angeles, but elsewhere as well, and where the consulting bill is not paid for by the cities, but is paid for by Bloomberg Associates. It's a really a special, a new kind of an institution, and maybe she'll tell us something about that as well. But because of her great influence in New York and her deep thoughts about how to transform the cities, she was selected as a Regents lecturer to talk to us about designing the 21st century city. And with that, I'd like to call upon Janette.
Excellent. We're off to a start. Well, first of all, I want to say a big thanks to both Evie for that awesome introduction, and to Marty, who's been spectacular. You know, he talked about feeling like he'd been in transportation for 75 years. I also feel like I have been in transportation for 75 years, and it has nothing to do with the New York Post. I can't get this started. But, you know, if you are in public services, it turns out every year is equal to 7 years. It's like doggy, right? So we really have been it really has been 75 years. So I really thank you for that introduction, and it is really great to be back in LA. I love LA, which is school here. I think it's an unbelievable town, and I'm really honored to be here with you as the Regents lecturer at the Wesleyan School. I think the work is extraordinary, what you're doing here, and it's really important. But before I get started, I want to get a sense, how many of you have been to New York City? Yeah. Oh. Okay. How many of you have been to New York City the last 6 years? How many of you have been here in the last year? Oh my God. How many of you have ridden bikes in New York City? What a fantastic audience. Okay, well, if you've been to New York City, and you all have, and by the way, for those of you that haven't come, you are invited, personally invited to come. And when you come, you will see that there is a sea change in what the streets of New York will look like. There's a brand new vocabulary on the streets that didn't used to be there. New Yorkers now talk about traffic calming. New Yorkers now talk about bike share. New Yorkers now talk about wayfinding. There is just a completely different set of transportation options and designs on the streets of New York. And, you know, once known as the mean streets, I think they've really changed in close to real time. And our streets have taken on a deeper importance, as Evie pointed out, given the challenges of climate change, population growth, sustainability, pollution, and we are simply not going to create healthier, safer, more sustainable cities with the strategies that we followed up to now, that ignore all the other ways that a street is used. The UN estimates that within the next 40 years, 70% of the world's population is going to be in cities. And so the choices that we make today about how we prioritize our streets has implications not only for millions of people today, but worldwide implications for generations to come. And it's already clear in the United States that we're not going to be driving our way into the future. The number of miles traveled, driven, has fallen, and it's at its lowest levels in 20 years. And at the same time that people are ditching their car, they are jumping on bikes. And you are seeing an explosion in systems like bike share, which is now in over 700 cities with 700,000 bikes. And when you look around the world, younger people are looking for choices. They don't want to have the burden of owning a car. And so you're seeing car share, bike share, Lyft, Uber, all sorts of different new options are taking hold. And city planners need to adapt to these new changes and understand the way that people want to get around. And we're just really starting to glimpse what this shared economy means for transportation in cities. And it's not just about retrofitting cities with new software. It's also about retrofitting their hardware. And you know, whether it's the streets of New York, whether it's the streets of LA, our streets have a lot in common. 20th century design really focused on moving as many cars as possible from point A to point B. And you know, all the other uses of the street were left out of the picture. You can see that this is Times Square in the 1950s. You can see that same approach at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn in the 1920s. You can see it on Spring Street in 1919 in Los Angeles, or on the 405 today. And I think that this approach was really epitomized at the Futurama exhibit at the World's Fair, 1939. And what's missing from this picture? People. No people, right? You know, streets are our most valuable assets in cities, and yet our street designs haven't taken into account the way people want to use them. And I think that this dysfunction has somehow become accepted. You know, we've become used to our streets as being out of balance. And that's why Mayor Bloomberg's Plan YC, the long-range sustainability plan for New York City, was such a transformative and visionary document. It recognized that the design of cities is a key issue for our future. And we needed to make course corrections today if we wanted to ensure that we lived in a greater and greener New York City with 1 million more people in 2030 than the 8.4 million people that we have there today, so that when we open our doors and windows and walk out in 25 years, we like what we see. And Plan YC provided the conceptual framework for us to look at our streets differently, the potential that's been literally hidden in plain sight for generations. And it's clear that the new LA DOT manager, Salita Reynolds, yes, I heard a little and Mayor Sadik get that LA streets are valuable assets. They just released this new strategic plan for Los Angeles, and I encourage all of you to go onto the website and take a look at it. It's all about realizing LA's economic potential and making it easier for Angelinos to get around, whether you're walking, whether you're rolling, whether you're driving. It's a great plan. And you know, LA is seeing tremendous transit growth. I think Metro's got some 500 million trips a year taken on Metro, and it is impressive to see the transit construction that is underway here. And it's a key part of the city's future, absolutely, is transit investment, but there are also other strategies that can help support this development that don't cost billions of dollars and can be done in fairly short order by just making better use of our existing infrastructure. And in New York, we followed a different strategy that focused on prioritizing pedestrians, prioritizing bikes and buses, making it easier for people to walk around, to enjoy the city, really to make our streets safer for everyone. And we found that people were really hungry for new public space. This was one of our first projects. It was in 2008 in Madison Square on 23rd and Broadway. And we put out these orange barrels, as we do for any construction project, and 2 hours after we put out the orange barrels, an art class, just right in the space, you know, no tables, no chairs, no nothing, just concrete, you know, and it's there, and they are sketching away. They were so hungry for the space. And, you know, there are lots of opportunities for improvement. You know, the design of a street really will tell you the way it wants to be used. You know, this one clearly tells you to shelter in place. Or cross if you dare. This one clearly says free parking. This one it's like a tarmac. It's like, gentlemen, start your engines. This is like anything goes here. Bike at your own risk. And, you know, streets can also highlight what's missing. You know, crosswalks, bus shelter, also show that, you know, even a place to sit down, you know, can be difficult to come by. And when you think about it, New York, it's a great walking city. All of you have been there. It's great to walk around, great to take in the sights, but there is literally hardly any place to sit down, you know. This is what you see. You know, people are perched on these, you know, fire hydrants. You know, this is not a remarkable world-class city. And so, you know, it's not great for seniors. It's not great for families with kids. It's really not great for merchants. It's not great for anyone. And so, you know, we moved quickly to bring some balance to our streets, bring some new approaches to our streets. You know, the considerations that have been largely pushed out by 20th century traffic design. So you remember this shot of Times Square? Well, in 2008, it looks still pretty much the same. You know, you see this sea of people that are trapped, you know, on this island. And, you know, 90% of the space was used by people on foot, was the foot traffic. And yet they only had 10% of the space. So really the epitome of a street out of balance. And people traded the safety of the sidewalk for the street. You know, New Yorkers would like to get around in a New York minute. You know, we don't like to wait. We hate to wait. And, you know, so you walk in through Times Square, and, you know, we would have people that would come from all parts of the world to see the crossroads of the world, you know, and sometimes they would walk 4 abreast, you know, which is a way to drive New Yorkers insane. Because, you know, we really want to get by, and you're not moving. And so what ends up happening is we trade the safety of the sidewalk for the street, right, just to get by. And so it was a very dangerous crossroads. You know, and we're kind of crazy in New York. There's so much traffic on our foot traffic on our sidewalks. I remember when I first started, there was a group of guerrilla artists that went to Fifth Avenue, and they dressed up in New York City DOT uniforms, caps and vests, and they had it all there. It's all coming together, and they proceeded to paint a stripe down the middle of the sidewalk on Fifth Avenue. And on one side, they wrote visitors. And everybody loved it. I got so many compliments. Great idea. So, you know, we've got a lot going on in the streets of New York. So, in 2009, we closed Times Square to 2 cars on Broadway from 42nd to 47th Street. And we wanted to test it to see if it worked. You know, I work for a data-driven guy. As he says, you know, believe in God, everybody else, bring data. So we brought the data, and we said that we were going to measure traffic speeds, we were going to measure incidents, injuries, we were going to measure economic performance, and if it worked, we would keep it, and if it didn't work, we would put it back to the way that it was. And that went a long way to reduce the anxiety about the project. Because, you know, the other piece is that people want, you know, looking at engineering drawings, looking at renderings is one thing, but to see something, to be able to feel it and touch it and smell it and see it, very different when you can see it in real time. And so, you know, we did that, and, you know, like any big project, there were surprises, right? So we are so excited. We closed it, put out the orange barrels, and lo and behold, the night before, we look out and it's, oh my God, it's just a sea of asphalt. There's nothing there. What are we going to do? Oh my God, what are we going to do? Run to Pinchick hardware store, buy thousands of discount beach chairs, and throw them out into the middle of the plaza as our new installation. And you know what ended up happening? Is everybody talked about the beach chairs. Did you like the beach chairs? Do you like the color of the beach chairs? What about the beach chairs? Different kinds of beach chairs, you know? And so nobody talked about the fact that we closed Times Square. They just talked about the beach chairs. And so I am telling you, this is the secret sauce. If you've got a controversial project, just put out the beach chairs. All you need to do. So, you remember we went from this, 2008, to this. And so, you know, temporary materials, it just really showed the possibility of the street. And, you know, newspapers, not so supportive. You know, they predicted Carmageddon. The chairs were terrible. What did you do? Go to Kmart and buy them out? I mean, which we did. But, you know, when the reviews came in, you know, from the critics that really mattered the most, 58% of New Yorkers supported it. 74% of New Yorkers said that the Times Square was much better, dramatically improved after we'd made the changes. And the project did just exactly what it was supposed to do. It reduced injuries. It was a home run in terms of motorists, pedestrians, cyclists. And so, based on the evidence, Mayor Bloomberg decided to make it permanent. And we also did this all along Broadway. This is in Macy's on 34th Street, and we really created a kind of miracle on 34th Street, and it became, I know, it became an instant hit, and these plazas were filled whether it was 2 a.m. Or 2 p.m. And, you know, no Carmageddon. In fact, traffic moved as well or better than it had before. Businesses like what they saw. Retail rents soared. 6 new stores moved into Times Square. It became one of the top 10 retail locations on the planet. You know, it attracted its, you know, share of celebrities. That's actually Lady Gaga there on the H&M slide, opening the store. And this is the new Times Square. We cut the ribbon on it, Mayor Bloomberg in December, and we've got a really new crossroads of the world that's worthy of its name. They have the space to take it in, and I just really want to underscore that this fast-acting approach was key. If we had followed the traditional construction program, the time frame in New York, it's 5 years. We would probably still be talking about Times Square, and I'd be showing you a plan rendering of it versus, you know, the fact that you can actually go out there and see it in real time. And it wasn't just Times Square. We did it all over New York City. You remember this parking street? Over a weekend, we turned it into a plaza using paint and tables and chairs. It became a neighborhood centerpiece and an anchor for the local businesses there. Retail sales went up 172% after we installed the plaza. We did this in places like Queens. This is in Corona, and a pretty simple change that you can see here. Again, just connecting the street to the island that we have right there. it was an easy and really impressive piece of work. Did it in downtown. This is Willoughby, a big hub in downtown Brooklyn. That after 47% increase in retail sales after we made those changes. Another piece in Brooklyn, Fowler Square. You can see the changes. Same thing in East New York. This is actually where the number 3 subway line ends, known for being a very distressed neighborhood. You were dumped unceremoniously into the street. We created a plaza to become a wonderful place for the community. Also did it in the financial district. Again, this is paint. This is not expensive to do. It can be done very, very quickly. We also work very closely with community groups and neighborhood partners. We set up a neighborhood plaza partnership program to maintain the plazas, so particularly in distressed areas that may not have the ability to set up a business improvement district that's supported by commercial businesses. We did this for plaza projects all across the city. We had some great unexpected supporters. That's David Burns singing the praises of vibrant public spaces. We set over 60 of these plazas in motion all across the city. I talked about the fact that we don't have places to sit down. We have a new bench program, and to deal with the fact that we don't have seats, and we turn sidewalks like these into neighborhood destinations with the benches, landscaping, that's bioswales there. We also focused on areas on transit that didn't have benches or transit stops, in areas with high concentrations of seniors, really just providing invitations for people to linger and enjoy and take in the city. 1,000 of them installed today all over town. And you remember this free delivery street? We turned this into a rapid bus corridor with red carpet lanes for the buses. Again, we moved quickly with red paint. We also have traffic cameras that give you a ticket if you're driving the lane. You know, there's no physical barrier, but we've got the incentive for keeping cars out of lanes, and it works. We also have an off-board fare collection system, so you pay before you get on, and a traffic signal priority system, so the lights turn green for the buses. And we've done that all across the city. We've put in 6 new rapid bus routes in 6 years. It serves 60 million passengers a year. Again, it's not fancy. It's not state-of-the-art, ITDB certified BRT, but it is fast mobility. It's working. It is great to do. And again, doing it in real time. You have a fabulous system here in Los Angeles. I sort of drool when I see your rapid bus system. And you know, you understand the benefits. Today, 168 cities across 6 continents have some form of BRT, so it is a really growing part of the menu of options for improving cities. This was the Gentleman Striker Engine Street, which we did with the median, bike lanes, some parking, made it calmer, made it safer. It's now a leafy residential street that you'd like to be on. This tidal pool of traffic at Grand Army Plaza became this pedestrian and bike-friendly gateway, really attractive. And you know, one of the benefits of all of these projects is the safety benefits. You know, this is the Williamsburg Bridge, where it all kind of came together. You've got pedestrians, bikes, cars all crashing together. It was deadly. There were 9 people died in 7 years, 742 injuries. So again, we moved quickly with paint, and you can see the difference. And you know, I also want to underscore that it's not just one kind of strategy to make your streets safer. It's a panoply of strategies. It includes public education and campaigns. It includes different roadway designs. It includes safe routes to schools, slow zones, the bike lane network. All of these are part and parcel of the work to create safe streets. We also looked at our streets a little differently in terms of the existing infrastructure as canvas to bring new life to old spaces. This is a sound and light exhibition that we put in. You have Ciclovia. How many of you have done Ciclovia? Okay. So how many of you have done summer streets in New York? Okay, way to go. Gotta get those numbers up. It happens in August on Sundays, and we close Park Avenue from the Brooklyn Bridge to Central Park, 7 miles car-free corridor. You know, we program it so you can dance and tango classes, all this kind of stuff. First year we did it, there was we had kickboxing, and I did a kickboxing class with a deputy mayor I reported to. Extremely cathartic. Highly recommend that. And one of the things that we did is we did these kinds of installations. It's like the tunnel that's under Park Avenue, and as you walk through, the lights changed and the sounds changed. It was really extraordinary. With 6,000 miles of streets and 12,000 miles of sidewalks, there's a lot of canvas to play with. The largest art gallery, I think, in New York City is City Streets, and we have our first Assistant Commissioner for Urban Design, Art and Design in Wendy Foyer, who's spectacular. I encourage all of you to look her up if you're interested in these kinds of programs. And we had artists come and work with us and brought different kinds of colors and installations to our streets. We took advantage of the existing infrastructure we had. This is a metal fence in underneath one of my bridges where we keep the bridge equipment, a great installation. Even ubiquitous traffic barriers. We work with local artists, and then had school children and community groups all come and painted. We all pitched in, got out our paintbrushes, and sculpture along roadways and light installations on bridges. We also set up a wayfinding system for New York City. When you think about it, it's like Los Angeles. We've got a great system of signs for cars, but we really don't have a good system of signs for people. And in fact, we did a survey among New Yorkers, and we found out that at any point in time, 10% of New Yorkers are lost. And that's just the 10% that will admit it. So, we knew we had a problem. So we set up the system, and it's great. So you have a system of signage, that you know where you're going. It's got the walking radius. It's great. But nothing really captured the imagination of New Yorkers and people around the world than what we did on bikes. Bike lanes, bike share, bike corrals, bikes and buildings legislation. And in 6.5 years, we built almost 400 miles of on-street bike lanes, interconnected backbone for biking in New York City. And you can see where we were in 2007 and 2013, right? Look how easy that is. You just, voila. I could do this like all day. It's so easy to do. Yeah. So we took bike at your own risk streets and turned them into pedestrian and bike-friendly and car-safe corridors. And we tailored our designs. We had really a palette of designs. So with streets that were too narrow, we actually painted them with high-visibility paint. On streets where we had the room, we could put in the buffers like we did here. And we also calmed the traffic there by taking a lane away. And it was a great benefit in the Bronx. We also put in two-way lanes with protected barriers. And we gave cyclists a head start on traffic at traffic lights with bike boxes all over the city. We added new racks wherever we could. We also repurposed our single-space parking meters and put the bike racks on them, which was great. As a result, we saw bike ridership triple over 10 years. Our streets are the safest they've been in 100 years. But when you make these kinds of changes, when you push the status quo, it can push back. And it certainly did. And, the papers were all over this. And they really talked about these changes in terms of the conflicts that they created among the few instead of the benefits that they created for everyone. And it was amazing. Some people said that there would be so many people biking that there would be blood on the streets. And then other people said that nobody was going to use them, so why did we even put them in the first place? And other people said, well, why are you putting them in? Nobody asked for them. We really heard pretty much every single argument about why they couldn't work, that they wouldn't work, and one reporter even said, yes, this is true. Putting a bike lane next to the Israeli consulate would be a terrorist threat, a terrorist threat. It was completely surreal having to defend actions that made our streets safer. You know, when you think that we would have to justify leaving them in their dangerous status quo state. This is what we did. We took this corridor, which was known for speeding, and cyclists riding on the sidewalk because it was too dangerous to ride on the street. And we put in a two-way bike lane, and without reducing traffic volumes, without reducing traffic time, we eliminated sidewalk riding, and but it did not stop the yelling. In fact, one paper called this the most contested slab of concrete outside the Gaza Strip. Right? That's what we did. So, but, you know, while this made for some good short-term headlines, there were huge long-term benefits. And, you know, the community voted for this 5 times over. And the supporters far outnumbered the critics. And I can't say enough for the work of the local advocates and leaders that made this happen. Transportation Alternatives, Eric McClure, the community board leader, our city council member, Brad Lander. It took everybody coming together. And it's a really important point that really we've got to support these kinds of changes, and it takes everybody to get that done. So what we were left with, and it's still there today, despite the lawsuit, despite the headlines, is a very successful transportation project. Bike ridership tripled on weekdays. You see women and families out there, kids out there, and once again, the reality is just not the same as didn't meet some of the headlines. So that was just 1 mile of the 365 miles of bike lanes that we put down. And even though our investments, you know, in our bike and pedestrian infrastructure was less than 1% of our overall budget, right? 99% of our budget is on road and bridge state of good repair. Yet that 1% of the bike lanes was about 99% of our press coverage. And the reaction to these changes isn't unique to New York. You see that in Sydney, in London, Chicago, San Francisco. You see it here in LA. And some of it's cultural and political and really has little to do with transportation. So we moved along and we leveraged our bike infrastructure investment with a bike share system, and we put into place the City Bike program with 6,000 bikes and 330 stations. It is the first new transportation system in New York City in over 60 years at no cost to taxpayers, thanks to the sponsorship that we got from Citibank and MasterCard. And New Yorkers love the new bikes. They use them to work and get around. They use them for wedding photos. They use them to go to prom. I love that. Celebrities got into it. It was good PR. Of course, you know, the tabloids had a field day. They had all these, you know, alleged concerns. The bikes were too heavy. The bikes were too blue. Homeless people were using them for pickup spin classes. I mean, it really got fairly absurd. This really is my favorite one in New York Magazine, because City Bikes seem to touch this kind of group of New Yorkers. With an aversion to anything suggested by Mike Bloomberg, anything environmental or that involves sharing, anything that was healthy or seemed vaguely French. So really, that really tied it together for me. But at the end of the day, you see the results. You know, more bike lanes, more people cycling, safer streets. There is truth to the maxim that there is safety in numbers. And as the number of cyclists has quadrupled in 10 years, there's been no increase in the number of serious bike crashes. And the latest data shows us that that cycling momentum continues to build, even as other modes stay mostly flat. So far, 13 million trips taken on City Bike. Riders have ridden 22 million rides, and that's 880 times around Earth. In the process, they burned out, remember, I worked for a data-driven mayor, they burned off 920,000 pints of Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia ice cream. You have to use whatever you can find. Right? So, and it's interesting, even the real estate industry got into it. They understood the value that these city bike stations brought to their apartment listings. So perhaps with all that, it wasn't a surprise that New York was just recently named the #1 biking city in the United States. I'm sure LA is going to be coming up shortly on this. But it was some tough competition. It really was our kind of red carpet turn in New York. And so, in closing, I just want to highlight a couple things. These strategies, bus lanes, bike lanes, plazas, they're not just nice things to have. They have strong economic development and safety benefits. And, you can see here the results from our protected bike lane on 8th and 9th Avenue, injuries down, retail sales up. You can see that with our plaza projects. This is Union Square. Commercial vacancies down almost 50%. Speeding down. Our select bus service program. Retail sales up along the corridor. Good streets mean safe streets, and they are good for business. We also found that it's not a zero-sum game between traffic and public space, and it's a really important point because people will try that discussion point. And we found that when we measured the traffic speeds in Midtown Manhattan, after we had implemented all of these designs, traffic did not get worse. And we did implement a real-time traffic management system so that we could adjust the signals to account for congestion in real time. And these kinds of methodologies, these different ways of looking at our streets beyond just traffic speeds and traffic volumes is really important. This methodology gives us a 3D view of looking at the changes on our streets. And we put it out in a wrap-up report last fall so that other cities can use it to measure the impact of their changes. The street designs that we implemented are really a new operating code for the streets of New York. 11 city agencies came together. This doesn't sound very sexy, and it wasn't. It took 2 years. 11 city agencies coming together, hammering out a common set of designs and strategies of what's acceptable on New York City streets. And now every single public sector agency has to use this. Every single private sector entity that touches the street has to use these designs. So it doesn't depend on who's the mayor. It doesn't depend on who the transportation commissioner is. And these kinds of designs, these best practices were adopted and implemented with NACTO, National Association of City Transportation Officials. I encourage you to follow their work. They're amazing. It draws on the designs from New York and other innovative places around the country. Los Angeles is in there as well. It really gave cities a permission slip to innovate. The design guidance that we have for streets is 50 years old, the Ashto Green Book, right? And so we actually went to try to change the standards. And we didn't have Marty with us, otherwise we would have gone like that. But what we did was realize that, my great-great-great-grandchildren were going to have smart designs on their streets. So we needed to write our own book. And so this book we put out and was adopted by Secretary LaHood and is now standard operating procedure for streets. And you've seen a flowering of innovation since we put it out because, a lot of places have very traditional traffic engineers. They go to the books, they want to try something different, the book says no. And so now we've got a book out there that says yes. And, again, you're seeing it here, you're seeing it in Philly, you're seeing it in Mexico City, all over. And so, in the end, the conversation in New York graduated from anecdote to analysis. And when we talk about our projects in terms of transportation options, economic development strategies, safety, people responded. And, regardless of the headlines, when people asked New Yorkers what they really thought, the answers were the same. In the last poll before Mayor Bloomberg left office, 73% supported bike share, 72% supported plazas, 64% supported bike lanes. If this was an election, it would be a landslide. I know politicians that would love these numbers. And, the people were way ahead of the press and the politicians on this. You can also see the changes on New York by who's riding. 10 years ago, you'd have the guy on the left, lycra-clad, messengers, zooming down. And today, riders look like all New Yorkers, old and young and black and white, going to work, going to play, just getting around town. And the press coverage evolved as well. I think the transformations that we saw wasn't just what was on the street, it was how people thought about their streets, what they imagined their streets could be like. And given a choice, people will choose safer, more livable streets. And the changes, they'll be difficult, there will be controversy, but if the projects and the ideas are worthwhile and well executed, the good outcomes will outlast the bad headlines. And well-designed streets with space for people shouldn't be carved out at the last minute just from space for cars. It should be designed directly into the street. And this is actually First Avenue today. This is like my favorite picture, one of my favorite moments in my life. I am a transportation wonk, so the bar is low. But on the day we launched City Bike, I was riding up First Avenue in this lane, and I looked over, and the cars were parked in their spots, and the pedestrians were on the pedestrian refuge island. Cars were speeding through, buses in their lanes, birds singing, rain was falling. Moment, it was like, didn't get any better than that. And just a few years ago, it looked like that. And so, it doesn't take decades, it doesn't take millions of dollars. It takes vision, it takes political courage, it takes the leadership of all of you in this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a really inspiring talk. And I'm going to only ask one or two questions before opening it up to everyone, because I know you all have many comments and questions on what Janette has been saying. The point I'd like to ask you about, maybe to get the conversation started, is that streets, you spoke about streets and people, and the streets are for people, but there are other needs that people have that include, for example, goods movement to serve the many stores where all this retailing success has happened. And streets are also used for emergency access by fire engines, the police, and ambulances. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, and I understand that these different types of vehicles can be separated in time as well as in space. Mm-hmm. There can be unique access in emergency situations and so forth. But how do you deal with the institutional issues that are often associated with the importance of health and emergency response and goods movement to the commercial and industrial organizations that are also in here?
It's a great question and a really important question, because actually when we did our projects, when I talk about how our streets were basically frozen in time for 50 years, suspended animation. So really nothing had changed for 50 years, including parking regulations. And so there was an opportunity when we went door to door, because we went door to door for the businesses and residents when we did our projects, there was an opportunity to have a conversation about whether these parking regulations and the hours for, say, delivery met their needs. And in many cases, the regulations were 20 years old. And so we were actually able to update the regulations, update their needs, provide different delivery windows, provide different kinds of parking options around the corner. And that went a long way to help generate support for the projects and do some important updating for these local businesses and certainly facilitated commercial deliveries. We also do off-hour deliveries. We did an experimental pilot program that's been continued. 25 companies have now continued this pilot, and so we're encouraging delivery folks to make their deliveries in non-rush hour times after 7 p.m., that kind of thing. So again, our streets don't have to be used the same way all the time. And so looking at it temporarily is a really important piece. And so that's what we've been doing on some of the freight pieces. As you might imagine, everybody was wildly thrilled in police and fire when we started talking about these changes. Just could not get enough of it. So, but fortunately, I had the pleasure of working with a really enlightened Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, who was extremely supportive, as was Nick Scapetta and Sal Cassano, who were the fire commissioners during our term. And I didn't ever do projects that I didn't brief them on beforehand. And so the leadership at the top level was crucial to getting these changes to happen. I think if you'd asked, if you'd gone a little further down the food chain, you might not have had the same kind of receptivity that we had. And, we did a lot of projects, we tested them out. And so everybody got comfortable with them. And when the fire department had an issue about a turning radius on the street, we worked it out. When the police commissioner had an issue on security and how we needed to design, a different approach in terms of the security issues that we have in New York, we addressed that. And so it was really an iterative process with the senior leadership of these different agencies. And again, when you work, Mayor Bloomberg had zero tolerance for silos. He wanted everybody working together. And so that also went a long way when there was a common table where you're pulling people together to talk about different projects and programs and priorities. That helped. People were helping one another in trying to accomplish some of the big goals that we had in, say, Plant My Seed.
Okay, questions? Yes, please.
Yes, if you haven't talked to my neighborhood council. Sure. Hi, I'm Ellen Isaacs. I work at Metro and Government Relations, but I'm here as a citizen and a fan, I should say. The second question was, can we get this PowerPoint somewhere? Will you share?
Yeah, and I think this is being taped too.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
I think it'll be available.
All right, then my question is this. When you say you worked with neighborhoods in order to, get community input for the plazas, things like that, how much did you work with them? I mean, I find that getting a project done in a neighborhood can be just way too contentious and you never get to the end point that you want. So
That's a really good question. And when we started out, we actually started our early work in areas where we had support, right? And so we did a lot of work quickly to demonstrate what could be done. So the plaza in Dumbo was a good example of that, a lot of support. And what ended up happening in doing that, and we did that all over, quiet projects all around, not putting a lot of attention on them. And we then had examples to point to. And this is what this looks like. And you could bring people to show them what it was about. We also we did 2,000 meetings a year. We were out every single night. Every member of my staff was out every night. This is not, faint of heart, any of this kind of stuff. And so that made a big difference. And the way we ended up talking with communities about the projects was we started actually by having a different conversation to begin with about what is the problem that you're trying to solve. Right? We would talk about the traffic injuries, we would talk about the traffic fatalities. We started our conversations that way, not saying, here's a new bike lane that we want, here's a new plaza that we want. So that started a different conversation that made it easier for us when we came to talk about, we'll see if you're interested in safer streets, this might be a great strategy for you to pursue. And so that, I think, went a long way to helping get some of the buy-in to these different projects. But it is really, a lot of, footwork. It's a lot of shoe leather to, do those community meetings. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening was we then turned our programs into application-based programs. So people now apply to us for a plaza or a bike lane or traffic calming. And the demand is off the charts now. And it's a really interesting model. Once you've got something to point to and people then want it, it's not the government then coming to you and saying, you want this. You have to get the community support, the political support, the business support as part of the application to come in. So once you can get that vocabulary on the streets, there are interesting ways to sort of change the terms of engagement.
Yes. Please, it would be helpful if you would identify yourself.
I'm Dave Jackson from UCLA. I'm a psychologist. Did you have some field experiments where you had the reverse course and go back to what it did before?
Well, we didn't reverse course. We did have one, yeah, I guess we did reverse course in Williamsburg, which is, we put a bike lane down, and which was requested by the community, but it went through a very Orthodox Jewish community, and they were fearful of girls in flirty skirts, and they did not want young ladies riding on their bikes through the community. And so we ended up creating a different bike route that went, on the southern end of the community. We actually left the bike lane in, but we didn't take it out, but we built a much more robust connection that was terrific. And so we were able to address the needs of the community, and build an alternative project that actually was even better than the one that we had proposed. But there's not a single project, that's a really good point, there's not a single project that we've done that we didn't tweak in some way. We constantly work to revise and update. If some part of it's not working, we adjust it.
A few weeks ago, here in Westwood Village, the Westwood Village Improvement Association annual meeting featured 2 UCLA professors speaking on urban design issues in very general terms. When the moderator asked them specifically about their opinion on bike lanes for Westwood Boulevard, they both said they didn't have the knowledge to take a position on that. What kind of information would an urban design professional need to have about Westwood Boulevard in order to say that they favor bike lanes there?
I think that's no comment. Let's talk about it.
Thank you.
Robert Garcia, I'm a civil rights attorney. Robert Garcia, I'm a civil rights attorney with the city project here in Los Angeles. Gentrification and displacement is the problem. What is the solution?
Is that all?
LA is now the most expensive city in the nation in terms of the percentage of pre-tax income people pay for rent. New York City is not far behind. 7 of the top 10 most expensive cities in the nation are in California. And we've done a lot of work on greening LA, and as places become greener and more desirable, the people for whom we worked can no longer afford to live there or even work there because their rents go up in terms of their living quarters and also in terms of their smaller businesses. The same is true in Manhattan and San Francisco. Are there best practices for affordable housing, workforce housing, and also affordable workplaces?
Well, under Mayor Bloomberg, he had a 5-borough development plan, and so focused on looking for affordable housing opportunities everywhere possible. I think it's 165,000 units done. I know that the de Blasio administration, Mayor de Blasio, is following up on that, and he's got a big affordable housing strategy, again, looking for opportunities around the city. There's no easy answer to that, and I think that they're, figuring out ways to lever affordable housing into the construction and renovation of old and new buildings is key. On the transportation side, one of the things that we worked very hard to do was to ensure that people had access that they had transportation options to get around that were affordable, that were convenient, which is a really big deal. I mean, because you're talking about close to $10,000 a year having a car. So if you can have that money be used to pay for a mortgage, to pay the rent, it can make a big difference. So again, looking for transit-oriented development possibilities as part of that affordable housing issue is one way to get that done, and really marrying transportation and land use better together to accomplish those kinds of goals, is a key strategy.
Jackie Gill?
I'm Jackie Gill, and I'm with Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. I had a question. It was really fortunate that Mayor Bloomberg was so supportive. Do you have any suggestions or strategies for trying to get this type of, pedestrian and bicycle friendly improvements made when you don't have that kind of support in your political leadership? I mean, have you experienced this with other cities where does it depend on like grassroots activism or getting bicycle and pedestrian groups out there?
It depends. It's both. You need the support at the top and the support at the bottom. And Mayor Garcetti and General Manager Salita Reynolds yesterday announced the strategic plan, which calls for Vision Zero. So that's a huge step forward for Los Angeles in terms of prioritizing pedestrian safety. So I think that's going to be a really important development here in Los Angeles. But it's a strategy, and it's going to take the work of people on the ground here, everybody in this room, to support when those kinds of new design changes come for, whether you're giving a roadway a road diet, whether you're, reducing crosswalk distances, whether you're putting in a slow zone. All of those kinds of changes can be controversial, and you need to have that support. Advocates like you, advocates like everybody here, need to stand up for those changes. That made a huge difference in New York, to have that community-based support. Yeah.
Hi. John Christensen with our city lab here at UCLA. And I was wondering, so the mayor, Bloomberg, had a huge appetite for data and used it, and U-Haul used it very effectively. I wonder how important was data also, at the at other levels, at the community level, at the telling the stories to the newspapers. Was it kind of equally important to have that kind of data at all those levels, or did stories and images become more important?
Well, the data was really important. It's a great question, because we ended up taking that data, particularly the traffic fatality and injury data, KSI data, to all the community boards. So all the community boards knew what the traffic safety issues were in their particular neighborhoods. And you have a different conversation when you start at that point. We actually also did a pedestrian safety action plan. We did a study, a 6-year study of traffic fatalities and injuries in New York City. It was the largest done in the United States. And it became our sort of Rosetta Stone for where we made our transportation safety improvements. The sort of who, what, where, when, and why of these crashes. And that's a really great tool to have when you're going to communities, to have that kind of pinpoint data to make the, which is the basis for making the recommendations. Now that said, there are going to be people that say like, oh, this is the numbers, what about the numbers? And so it really is important to frame it also. You really need to provide the narrative for that as well. And so talking about safe streets, talking about also, from the data, the economic development potential of of safer streets, it makes a big difference. So they really do go hand in glove.
Yeah, so Mark Levinson with SCAG. One of the things I'm interested in that over the 7 years, you seem to have done everything. And so, on day one, and in hindsight, 2020, on day one, you did these focused, fast-moving pilots, but you also laid a policy groundwork for inter-department collaboration, and you looked at the engineering standards, and you looked at the data, and you did community outreach, and you had political leadership. So, when you started, did you have a strategy in place? Did you have kind of an idea of how these things would roll out, or for the people in there, for example, did it just kind of trial by fire?
Well, thank you for that, by the way. We didn't win everything. We didn't win congestion pricing, right? So that's still to be done, and that's on the to-do list. And I do think that it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It won't be called congestion pricing. But I ended up, it's kind of a funny story. When I went to interview with Mayor Bloomberg, and I walked up the steps of City Hall, and very exciting. It's a beautiful building. You go in there and the interviews at this sort of committee in the whole room. It's like a Knights of the Round Table scene. And I get in there, and all the deputy mayors in there, and the mayor asked me the question, why do you want to be traffic commissioner? And I said, I don't want to be traffic commissioner. I want to be transportation commissioner. I'm like, dead silence. And I thought, wow, that's like the shortest interview in city history. I'm completely done. But I outlined I ended up outlining everything that I thought should be done. I talked about buses and bikes and all this kind of stuff. And, again, dead. Completely dead. So I walked out and I saw a friend who was interviewing. And I said, it's all yours. I'm not getting this. And it turned out that this was right on the cusp of Mayor Bloomberg doing the Plan YC announcement, right? This big vision, 127 initiatives, long-range sustainability plan for New York City that laid out a lot of those priorities. And so we did a strategic plan for New York City DOT, which is the first strategic plan that had ever been done. It laid out our goals, projects, our benchmarks, all of that, pulled the agency itself together. And so that some of the older engineers were here with the younger people, and we all agreed on what the strategy was going to be. And so that allowed us to move much more quickly with a strong vision, moving in the same direction that mirrored what that big vision was that Mayor Bloomberg had. So I think that really helped us, be able to execute quickly, understand what we needed to do in terms of the data, understand what we needed to do in terms of the projects and the community buy-in.
Marty, we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
In the back. To Walters, and I'm just speaking as a citizen. I wanted to ask about shared responsibility. Every driver knows that they have to be alert and that they have a high responsibility to keep bicyclists, whether they're less of a value or not. They know in their hearts they have a necessity to keep pedestrians and cyclists safe, and they know that there's big penalties for even grazing somebody, even though they do talk aggressively against it. I've been a cyclist. I was a former cyclist at a time when there were no bike paths, and I would cycle even at 3 o'clock in the morning. I always used streets. I never used sidewalks. And I knew that when people doored me or whatever, I knew that the alertness had to be on me. And what I see now I'm all of that. I'm a driver, I'm a walker. What I see is that all of the responsibility is only on the drivers. And I wanted to know if in New York City you have any luck at making everyone recognize that they have an alertness responsibility. So what I see now is I see people text walking, I see people text cycling, even in areas where cycling is popular. And they're not text cycling on path. They actually cross major boulevards, let's say Jefferson and Hoover, things like that at rush hour, and they'll be texting and cycling. I also wanted to ask, last week I believe a cyclist killed a pedestrian in New York. So, and cyclists also ride with no lights and dark clothing. So how much responsibility does each party have, and do you enforce it?
Yeah, well, everybody has responsibilities, for looking out for one another in the streets of New York. We have a big Look campaign out there, right? And when you think about it, everybody's a pedestrian at some point during the day. And in New York, we're a little different. A third of New Yorkers get around by walking, a third of New Yorkers get around by driving, and a third of New Yorkers get around by taking public transit. So we have a different mix. But that said, we focused on cycling safety, on pedestrian safety, and on driver safety. Texting while driving is a huge concern. 10% increase nationally in fatalities with texting and driving. And so,
Texting and walking.
I know, I'm going to finish the, right. So, but there is no question that you need to have a balanced approach on these campaigns. And, we've got the safest streets ever, mostly because of the bike lanes and the redesigns. And so there is a really important safety benefit that comes from that. That said, there can be a sense of entitlement that goes along with that. And so I had this very subtle campaign that we had in Europe. It was called Don't Be a Jerk. Targeted cyclists, very strong message. And so we continue to push that. We do a whole campaign about touring. We do a whole campaign about pedestrian safety, same thing on the Look campaign. And so you need all three legs of the stool. It's really important. There were 264 deaths, last year. And so we need to do everything we can to make everybody on our streets as safe as they possibly can be. That involves engineering, redesigns, that involves safety campaigns, that involves the police department and enforcement getting involved. So again, it's a campaign. We hand out free helmets, we hand out lights, we stripe the lanes. The bottom line is you just got to look out for one another on the streets of New York. And I think that's same, in other cities. And, we're sort of at a tipping point now, right? And so again, it is a change that people need to get used to, and that change can be a little hard, but it is absolutely not one mode over another, because we're all, what your perspective is depends on whether you're walking or biking or driving. And when you're driving, you hate the pedestrians and the cyclists. And when you cycle, you hate the pedestrians and drivers. So it's like it really just depends on your vantage point.
Okay, you're going to get the last question.
Hello, my name is Lisa, and I'm a grad student here as of tomorrow morning. And I've been jealously watching City Bike and programs like it roll out. And in my hometown of Vancouver, we can't make it happen because we've got a helmet law. So, two-part question. Do you think City Bike could be successful if you had a helmet law in place?
No.
And if you have the data and all of the data out there and the city knows it, how do you make it happen? How do you make a bike share happen and to change the laws? Do you have any suggestions? Because I feel like we've been working on it forever and it's failed in Montreal, and Canada can't seem to make it happen because we have all these helmet laws you can't get around.
Yeah, I think they repealed theirs in Mexico City, so that we do have examples of that being repealed. And, the systems that have mandatory helmet laws are not successful, even like Melbourne, and the least successful system because they have the helmet law. And I think part of it is sort of pointing out that there's no greater risk from riding a bike without the helmet under the bike share system than there is walking down the street, right? Same risk. So if you could put it that way, like, okay, so everybody in Vancouver, maybe you all need to be walking around wearing a big helmet, right? Pointing out that is a really important piece, and taking people also to those cities, taking leaders to different cities that have successful bike share programs is another way to sort of underscore that. Because you have these bikes, these are like 45-pound bikes. You are not riding this bike in the Tour de France. You are not zooming along on a bike, bike share bike. And so I think that understanding that and underscoring that is a really important part of it, and also understanding that the more cyclists you've got on the streets, the safer they're going to be.
Well, I am not completely sure that I learned how to take the work that I do and turn myself into a rock star. But I have learned a great deal. Janette emphasized the changes in the use of streets to serve the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, but at the same time, an enormous amount of hard work was going on with the world-class public transit system that New York has, and with the vast majority of travelers in New York who still rely on automobiles to make many of their trips. And the way it was presented, it was a series of marginal changes that improved an already excellent system that relied upon very, very hard technical work and very astute political involvement and compromise and so on. And I think we've all learned from hearing Janette's presentation how difficult and complex these issues can be. But at the end, if you do them well, how rewarding this kind of work can also be. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.